We spend so much time as entrepreneurs upgrading our funnels, upgrading our team, upgrading our systems. But how often do we sit down and say, like, it's time for an identity upgrade?
Mm-hmm.
We just barrel through the emotions because we're conditioned that that's a part of it. That's the price that you pay for success. That's what we're taught. And we see people glorify it. It's put on a pedestal in the way that people talk about enduring. The world has taught us some of the most fundamentally useless ways of thinking about success that actually go against our biology when it comes to achievement and happiness, success and peace. We are taught to push through pain at any cost, to use pressure to persist, focus on the goal, and do whatever it takes to get there. This is useful if the goal is to not starve to death. But success by any means necessary comes at a remarkable cost to our future self. Our mantra around here is not a penny from pressure, only pleasure. The More Alive podcast exists to lead us into a new way of achieving and replace outdated advice that threaten the dream life that actually makes us feel more alive. I'm your host, Andrea Crowder, mom, truth teller, and lover of daydreaming, here to help create a world where we all feel more alive. Welcome to the show.
I have to tell you, Andrea, doing podcast interviews with you back and forth for yours and now for mine, I know I said this on your podcast, but a year ago I would have been like, oh my gosh, I get to interview Andrea Crowder on my podcast. So this is a big moment. I'm excited to have this conversation.
I'm so excited. I literally feel the exact same about you. Oh my God, I get to have Nicole Culver on my podcast and I get to talk to you. I love all of this. Thank you.
And I have to, for those who are watching the video, I have to just pull this out right here because Andrea just sent this to me and other people who are going to be talking about her amazing program, The Pleasure Model. I was like, what? My face on money? What is happening? How did you eat? Where, can we just say, where did this come from?
Yes. So this is our second time sending money in the mail, by the way, for PR boxes. We did it for an offer I did years ago called Stacking Club. And I was like, wouldn't it be fun? I messaged my team. I was like, wouldn't it be fun if we sent stacks of cash? So we got little acrylic boxes and we put $100 in ones in the box with cute stickers on top. And then we put fake money on it, but it had my face. So we've had that. And I had it up on my whiteboard for a really long time because it's just, when you have cute merch and design stuff, you don't want to forget about it over the years. So I put out my whiteboard and I was walking into my office and I saw it and I was like, oh my God, we need to do the money again. But this time we're going to put everyone else's face on it. And it was so much fun. The details were just iconic.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so let's back up. Can you introduce yourself? Tell everyone who you are, what you do, and then I want to get into talking about this really important conversation about pleasure and business, pleasure and life.
Yes. My name is Andrea Crowder. I've been an entrepreneur since 2011. I started network marketing. We both did Beachbody. And I started entrepreneurship with one Instagram follower, my sister, and a couple hundred Facebook friends, no business experience whatsoever. And I fell in love with, number one, community. In fact, when I was selling network marketing, I would be like, I actually don't know what this is, but you're going to love the team. That was my pitch. And I just was so obsessed, so deeply, deeply obsessed with women heading in the same direction who were supporting each other. It was such a great community experience. And it was the best way to start figuring out who I was as an entrepreneur because I didn't have to create the products, but I did have to learn a whole lot about myself. I had never even heard of the personal development section in Barnes and Nobles. I didn't know it existed until I was in my mid to late 20s. I grabbed this book one time called 20 something 20 everything because I felt like I was going through a quarter life crisis. This was just before I found Beachbody. And I'm like, what am I doing with my life? I still don't have a college degree. I'm working as an executive assistant. I wasn't sure where I was going. And going through my experience in network marketing, it's a well-oiled machine, as you know, they have deadlines, they have launches. And so I got to experience all of the traditional sales and marketing components of entrepreneurship And I didn't realize this then, but that taught me how to create courses because once I figured out how to do something, I had to then teach it to my team. The only way to make good money in network marketing, which did become my very first seven-figure business, was to be able to duplicate your skill set with other people. So I went from being a stay-at-home mom at first to getting a job with very, very little background or experience, becoming the executive assistant, and I was an event planner in the corporate world. And then I started my like online health and fitness business with Beachbody. I did that for 8 years straight. I built us up into one of the top teams, top 2% of the company. At one point in time, we're holding like this, we were like number 17 for overall growing teams in Beachbody, and the majority of it was because I just became obsessed with my people. But the thing that bothered me about network marketing is I would have these people come in and they're like, "Oh my God, this is going to change my family's life." And I'm like, "It is. Like, I'm so excited for you." And I would be so devoted to the outcome that they were looking for themselves and their family. And then when they couldn't figure out how to get themselves to do the thing, it was frustrating to me because I'm like, I'm promising these people the world because that's what I've been able to create for myself. And I didn't understand why so few people would come into a business like that was fairly well set up and they weren't able to do it. So then I became obsessed with human behavior and I had been studying that for many, many years. But what I found was over time that the pressure of more, the pressure of bigger, the pressure of sustaining what you've already built, the pressure of people's expectations of you started to really take an emotional toll on me. And I remember I want to say it was like 2018, 2019, 2018, I think. I was sitting in my $1 million home, a Mercedes in the driveway. I had this amazing business that was paying me on repeat every single Thursday, a multiple six-figure income at that time with a totality of over $1 million in earnings, and I was still choking on anxiety. And I'm like, I can't live like this anymore. And I made a commitment at that moment to figure out why is it that I've done all the things that society says equals success, but I still feel like a broke stripper swinging around the pole, like it is where I started. My beginning entrepreneurship days were selling weed and stripping. And I'm like, my first 1099 was for a strip club. So I was never able to, at that point in time, break free from that past and feeling like it's all going to fall away. I have to keep swinging around the pole for a 20 and a lap dance here, a lap dance there. And I just kept having to like hustle in order to continue to keep it going, even though the network marketing model actually really did support me. I was making almost a six-figure income, even though I hadn't really touched it since around like 2019 for years until Beachbody completed their network marketing component of their business. But I became so obsessed with like human behavior, but also the emotional impact of success and trying to figure out where's the blend between achievement and fulfillment so that I can wake up every day and actually enjoy the life that I had built. And that's when I started my famous experiment of I promised myself I won't take a single penny from pressure, only pleasure. I didn't know that that was going to become a thing, a mantra, a thing that I was known for and interviewed for all over from podcasts all over the world. People saying like, I don't get it. How? Like, what do you mean you don't take a single penny from pressure? Are you lying? That doesn't work for everyone. Explain yourself. People can't just stop taking money from pressure because they have to be able to pay their bills. And I had to become really, really good at explaining like physiologically from a physiological standpoint, the way that we're taught about success and the way that we think about it works against how our body works and how our emotions work. And I had to rearrange that for myself first. I went on that 1 year experiment. And by the end of the year, my business grew by 300%. And then people really started listening to me. They're like, wait, what? You went from year to year in a year, and explain more. And the pleasure model program, I had been talking about this work for so many years at that point, for like 2.5 years, that when I launched it, I was like, nobody's going to sign up for this. I've I've literally already said it all and in so many different places it felt like that I was like, honestly, we'll see if anybody buys this program. And then it was the first time we'd ever did $100,000 day. And I was like, oh, no, this is still a thing. People still don't really fully get it. And I really created that program in order to assist someone in being able to embody the pleasure model really automatically so that they really experienced a completely different emotional state when having and growing a business. And that's where you and I became friends really like around that time
Yeah.
and then around my program known where we got to spend some time more intimately. But that's the gist of it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And before I ask you a few questions about this, do you ever think about like 20 I started in 2011 too. Started my first business in 2011 and was doing Beachbody then. Do you ever think about like back then, like Andrea and Nicole, like all the things, like we started at the same exact time and all the things we had to do and all the choices we had to make to like get to this point to like be sitting here
Oh my God, yeah.
together? Like that's the stuff that like really trips me out because it's like you never like one different decision, our
Yeah.
paths could have never met. And it's just like, oh, it was always meant to be this way.
And we were like paralleling each other without realizing it for
Yeah.
so long. I remember you just the other day you posted one of like your early YouTube videos and I'm like, "Oh my God, I
Yes.
have so many cringy early and I won't delete them because I'm like I
No,
want people to know.
never.
You guys should know how cringe I was before I became like I said I didn't know the personal development world even existed and now I would be considered a leader within the personal development world and I'm like
Yes,
I don't
I
know, I don't
know.
understand.
You can't ever delete them. And my sister sent me the screenshot of that because she filmed the video that I had shared. It was on like green smoothies. And I was like, am I breathing? Like, am I living in this video? Like, I look like a walking dead. Like, there's no energy here. But it's so fun to see like the growth. Oh my gosh, the
Yeah.
growth.
Oh,
So,
I remember one time thinking though, like in my early years, I was like so starving to like make it. And I remember I'd come home and I would go down to our basement in this like little townhouse that we lived in the Washington, D.C. area. Like we had rotting cabinets in our kitchen. And I literally just ripped out a thing, probably from like Architectural Digest of a beautiful kitchen. And I just taped it on my rotting cabinet. And I'm like, this is the kitchen that I'm gonna have someday. I will always be in a house like that. So like the freezing basement, I would go down there and I would do my workouts. And I remember I would just bury my face sobbing in the carpet. And I'm like, it's going to be worth it. I know it. I can't quit. I have no backup plan. I literally have no other choice. We're living paycheck to paycheck pre Beachbody. And I was like, this has to work no matter what. I won't stop until I figured it out. But like, it was pretty excruciating during some years where I'm like, this is much harder than I thought it
oh
was
my
going to
gosh.
be.
I know. And but isn't it funny like now it becomes a little like nostalgic, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're going through it it's so hard, but now looking back on it it's like oh, like you kind of talk about it like oh, the good old days. And when you're in it
Yeah.
you're like, "Oh my gosh, this is so bad." But I want to talk about what you said like you were choking on anxiety because I think for a lot of us and when I went through the pleasure model, I almost like woke up to the fact that there was like so much more pleasure available to me. And I still think like there still is another level.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of CEOs think, oh, one day the anxiety will be gone. One
Right.
day, like when I and they think that money is going to solve the anxiety, the stress, the frustration, but it does like it never does. It never
Hmm.
does. So do you want to talk about like that process to realizing like no, you actually have to figure out it's not the chicken or the egg. Like one thing
Right.
has to go first or you'll always be dealing with this crippling anxiety and then what's the point?
Right. So if you think about it from the perspective of everyone has the goal and the intention of making money, but everyone's experience and relationship of that is very different. And so, would it be that the money is the problem and also the solution? And if that were true, it would be an exclusive truth for everyone, right? And so, what we would all probably agree on is it's how we understand money and it's the narrative. It's the narrative that we've been trained to understand about what money is, how hard it is, and what it represents, if it represents safety, if we feel comfortable around it, what do we believe about our own habits and patterns around success. And so we're really just given this like very clear North Star of success happens as you know that you've reached the benchmark when you've like earned a certain amount, but that amount keeps changing.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we don't adjust our emotional relationship with success, our emotional relationship with money, our emotional relationship with leadership, with working with team members, relationship with relationships, our relationship with disappointment. It truly actually, if you more simplified the pleasure model is intended to rewrite the narrative on relationships for everything externally in your life in order for you to have a sense of peace around them. Because the narrative that we're sold is like, well, the pressure is just a price that you pay for success. I don't believe that. I know it not to be true anymore. I did believe it for a very long time. I've just learned that that's actually like unintentionally a very ignorant statement because that's not actually how the body works. It's not actually how our emotions work, why we have them. Most people don't even know and understand why we would even have an emotion for anything and how that works and how to address it. We just feel like we're at the whim of when we have them and how often we can like hold them, how often we can get that sense of peace. And then we're like, keep it. I never want to lose it. We like sell ourselves into the story that when we have a sense of peace or pleasure that we can keep it for always, and then we don't, and then we're disappointed. There's that relationship with disappointment again, and then we're in the sensation of like stress or anxiety or whatever, and we also think that will never end, which it does. And so it's really adjusting our relationship with different relationships is really the premise of the pleasure model. But I do it in such a way that, as I mentioned, it's more of an automatic byproduct of how you experience new things once I help you understand from a logical and illogical perspective on what's happening. Everything starts to kind of change for you. Would you say that that was your experience?
Oh yeah, 100%. And one of the things I didn't realize was that everything, and now I talk about this so much, even with my clients too, everything is a relationship. I think
Yeah.
we're so used to being in relationship with humans, but like you said, we're in relationship with money, we're in relationship with our emotions. And it's kind of, I kind of always equate it to like your best relationship, your best human relationship that you have. And hopefully everyone can think of one where it's like even my relationship with my husband, like if I'm having a bad day or he's having a bad day or he's in a bad mood or I'm in a bad mood, you're not just like throwing him out the door because he has one day where he's in a bad mood. It's like, no, I have so much trust with you
Yeah.
and we have such a great overall relationship that like I can just let you be in a bad mood and like I know you're gonna come back or I know like it's fine basically. I don't have to like if you're in a bad mood, I'm in a relationship with you that I know it's not actually my job to get you out of a bad mood. It's not
Yeah.
my job to change you. It's just my job to be accepting. And your quote, I
Mm.
think it's actually your dad's quote. It's like, accept, make peace with the conditions you're in.
Yeah.
I think that really hugely changed when I just realized, like, oh, all of these things are like my best human relationship. And I just kind of have to be like in trust with them that it's like, there's going to be highs and lows. There's going to be good, we'll put quotes around it like good, bad, but it's all like, it's all worth it. It's like, it's all okay.
But even what's trust built on, right? I like what you said, like acceptance, right? My dad says, make peace with the conditions you're in, and then you can improve upon it. It's when you argue against the conditions that you've been delivered that you extend suffering unnecessarily. So the faster you can make peace with what is and then get curious to understand it, the more that we can alchemize it, the more that we can improve things. And how many times when we've just like tried to understand our partner, has it alchemized their pain? Where it's like, how are you? I noticed that you're really upset. Instead of being like, oh my God, don't you know how busy and how many meetings I am today? And then like here, you're just going to bring your like bad mood to me. Like I already have so much on my plate, right? Like Number one, it's like a lack of understanding breeds suffering for both people. But the faster that you can lean in and say, like, just literally the one question, help me to understand. And when we do that for other people, they're like, oh my God, that's all I needed. All I needed was someone to care enough to understand. And I think we're even better about doing that for other people than we are for ourselves. And really, that's the premise of the pleasure model is like, it's understanding yourself. It's understanding your relationship. If you are triggered by your husband being needy, so to speak, when you are holding so much, and that's a really, really common belief system for female entrepreneurs, especially if you're out earning your spouse or you anticipate that you will. It's like, don't you know how much I'm holding for our family? That relationship, that's a relationship with holding. It's a relationship with expectations. It's a relationship with communication and being able to communicate that with your partner. It's a relationship with your trauma and your triggers, because a lot of times when you are instantly upset by your partner simply having a fucking human emotion, like it's more likely early childhood trauma or of sorts, where it's just like, I wasn't, you spend so many years where like you weren't given the attention and the understanding that you needed then, that over so long that pot starts to boil and boil and boil and boil, and then your partner just has a bad day and you're like, fuck you, don't you know what I'm doing for us? It's a
So,
clusterfuck.
oh my gosh, so much. And I think one of the things, and I'm going to try to explain this as best as I can. I feel like you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. One of the things that the pleasure model helped me see, and I still like unwind this. And actually, we talked about this on when I was on your podcast a little bit. Is there, and you mentioned this, where it's like I think sometimes we go through these like upgrades, whereas like for me, like I wasn't always making this much money. There was times where my goal was just to make $100 a day, and then it
Yeah.
was like $300 a day, and then it was $5,000 a month, and 10, and it grew. But one of the things I didn't realize was there's kind of like these past self scripts
Hmm.
running, and the one of the things the pleasure model did, and my other work with you, was almost like bring them to the forefront to realize, oh my gosh, this idea of like continually having to chase money is still running in my subconscious or running in my script. And I really needed to like upgrade that in 2024, because we were making more money year after year, but it started to feel like that chase over and over again. And I wasn't even aware of like how exhausting it was until
Hmm.
I became aware of it and realized, oh my gosh, this is like an old program. I don't need to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And I put it down.
Yeah. Yeah, we spend so much time as entrepreneurs upgrading our funnels, upgrading our team, upgrading our systems, but how often do we sit down and say, like, it's time for an identity upgrade? We just barrel through the emotions because we're conditioned that that's a part of it. That's the price that you pay for success. That's what we're taught. And we see people glorify it. It's put on a pedestal in the way that, like, in the way that people talk about enduring. You hear people like the Hormozis and even Katie Sanchez and these people that we like really, or Cody Sanchez rather, these people that we really, really admire in terms of what they've been able to achieve, but we're not asking the right questions. Like, what's it costing them to have that? And am I willing to pay that cost? And I would suggest you can have it also. And I think they say it for the right reasons, because they're like, don't bow out because you're having a challenging emotional state around it. And it's not, this conversation is still really new around our emotional relationship with these external experiences and how to upgrade our identity. Like, it's not new in terms of the history of the world, but it's new in entrepreneurship. I had a client come to me who has made over 8 figures in business, and she said, Andrea, I heard about this particular entrepreneur that he's passed away. And she's like, they haven't confirmed whether it's suicide, but I kind of suspect that it was. And she's like, Andrea, I would never do that, but I can't pretend like I didn't have the thought of, I get it. I understand. Because the way that we are taught to hold and to endure, because nobody else had a better way. Nobody else challenged it and said, but why? And does this have to be? And that was my great awakening in 2018, was like I was laying on the couch watching my kids play with their Christmas presents on Christmas Day, and my then husband was just sitting there peacefully watching Die Hard. Like, hate that movie now. And I'm just looking at them like all full of peace, and I was just choking on anxiety. It felt like razor blades were running through my system, and I'm like, I don't ever want to feel this way again. This doesn't make sense. I did all the right things that everyone told me to do. And I honestly, I felt like I was in a worse emotional condition than when I started. Even though I was stressed because
Mm-hmm.
we were living paycheck to paycheck, it felt like worse suffering because now the belief system was, but I shouldn't still be because I did my part. And that's like the fucked conversation that not enough people are having, that I really, really deeply hope to change.
I think it's so good. And these are, I think it's part of it is like we don't know what we don't know, which is why these conversations are so important because it's like I've done so much work and after all of those years, I didn't even realize that I had this like programming or this script to
Yeah.
continue to chase money. And I'm so thankful that I have done the work and that people like you put out these programs that can help build awareness around that. And I think the conversation around pleasure, it's so interesting because it's like kind of taboo, yet not like becoming definitely less taboo. But I think for some women, and even when it comes to business, especially, the concept of like pleasure in business is so foreign. It was so foreign to me. And I'm like, for I've always run my business with boundaries, with values, like not overworking, not hustling on the weekends, not working nights. Yet I never even explored the idea that like pleasure over pressure.
Mhm.
So can we just talk about that? Why do you think like the concept of pleasure, like I think when I first even saw it, like just seeing that and like paying for a program that even had the word pleasure in it, I was like, oh, this feels like a little racy when like it's not. Like it really is not.
So I've been saying the same thing in different ways almost since like the beginning of time, which is make decisions from love, not fear. But it's just not as catchy. And I
Mm-hmm.
accidentally said on a master class one time, I said, I don't make a single decision from pressure, only pleasure. And the chat blew up. People are like, I want that, I want that, I want that. And I was like watching, I don't know, like just 50 comments at once, like, I love that. And I'm like, oh, got it,
This is
noticed.
it. This is it. Yeah.
So I shifted it and then I posted just a quote card on Instagram and I was like, not a penny from pressure, only pleasure. And then I started getting the podcast interviews and I was like, okay, so what people needed was for me to say it in more like marketing terms, right? But what does pleasure mean? Pleasure just means a state of feeling in alignment. And like even the word alignment, people just gloss right over it. Anytime I use like ChatGPT to like help me kind of edit some of my content or whatever, it loves to put in the word alignment. I'm like, we don't say that around here. Like people are over that word already. Like that's part of the job is like I have to be a good marketer at helping someone to understand the value of being willing to do this type of identity work, which is essentially what you're doing. And it's reassociating just like the way that you think about things. Now, pleasure is joy, pleasure is love, pleasure is contribution, pleasure is gratitude. Think about it from this perspective. Pleasure is presence too. Like more than anything, it's presence. And that's how we would describe how it feels to be completely present. So let's say you've like fallen in love with someone, your attention is on them, they're saying something so sweet to you, it's like music to your ears, you're in that relationship with them, they give you one of those like early kisses in the first like, few 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks of you dating, and it's just like your body is just elevating, right? It's complete euphoria because you're so present with them. You're so present with the moment that your body is like overtaken by this beautiful euphoria. I feel that when I write my master classes. Like my body gets taken over when I'm connected to them, when I'm present with them. The other day I was like feeling uncharacteristically stressed around a master class, and I like because the thought that kept going on repeat in my head. My script, as you said, was you don't know what to say, you don't know what to say, you don't know what to say. And like as soon as I noticed the script and cut it, I was like, where did that even come from? I know all I have to do is tell the truth of here's what happened. Like there's really nothing else besides like I just have to know how to tell the truth, and I know how to tell the truth. I can say that. And then I broke that, and all of a sudden this sensation of interest was replaced with the pressure. And I was like, okay, if I was curious or if I were interested on thinking about this in a way that caused energy in my body, what would that look like? Where would I go? What would I think about first? What questions would I ask? So I start reallocating my attention to interest. And as I started to become more interested, I wrote the masterclass 12 minutes before we got started, and I was in this full, like almost non-physical state. Like I could barely even feel my body. And that's how I know where I'm like, when I've caught the alignment or the pleasure, or our company is rebranded into, our company is now called More Live. I've like caught the vitality or the liveness. I feel alive now. Like I like to say like my work writes me, I don't write it. And you know, when you're in that state of like flow, where it's just like coming through, and it's all of a sudden it's like you're washed with this warm feeling of like, I got it. I'm in the current right now where the current's taking me, and I can just sit back and relax, and I can let it take me, and I can enjoy it. That's what I'm teaching a lot of, is like from the process of creation, at least from that perspective, is like pleasure means you get to feel that sense of like the dance of like, I would say like, I don't dance it, it dances me. It moves me. My fingers move themselves because like I'm in relationship with them, and I would say that relationship is ultimately rooted in like massive truth, which is like that old script that wasn't actually true,
Yeah.
right? Like the truth will set you free every fucking time. And that's the way that I teach this works, where I tell the truth and I connect with someone from a really logical perspective. Because if you just tell someone like, well, don't feel pleasure or don't feel pressure, just do it from pleasure, they're like, sounds nice for you. That's a pipe dream. You can't just say don't feel it, right? Like I cause the pleasure to be eliminated for my client because I know how to unwind that for them in the way that they'll understand it, and the way also that they start to feel understood, where they're like, oh, that's why I've been feeling that way, and now I understand why that doesn't have to exist anymore. But it does take a deep understanding of how the unconscious mind works, how to be able to teach that in that specific way. But sorry for the long rant on that very, very simple question.
It's never a simple question, but the one thing I want to highlight is like, you said like you still ask the question like, oh my gosh, or you had the thought, I don't know what to say. And I want to highlight that because I think, again, other people can see someone like you or someone like me and think, oh, they never have that thought. They never feel like, I don't know what to say. And it's not that we never have those thoughts, it's that the relationship with that thought is different. You just didn't live there. You didn't sit there and say, you know what, you're right. You don't know what to say. You had the tools and the strategies to like, and the relationship to move on, almost like move on, and a strategy for it, I guess.
Yeah, because most of us are associating our thoughts with who we are. And so if you were to ask a bunch of really smart people, where does a thought come from? They would all say something different. And they've been studying this work and research for years. So if we can't get the smartest people on the planet to agree, then wouldn't it be safe to just say, we all don't know? Like that's the only thing that we actually can agree on, is that we have a belief system about it, but we don't actually know for sure. And so if we don't know where this thought came from, but then we look at things simply as a scientist, and you're like, okay, let me just think about this more curiously for a minute and say like, okay, well, I remember when I was taught in grade school, energy cannot be created or destroyed. And a thought would be a form of energy. I experience it very much as energy. So one thought can make me feel euphoria. Another thought, I might get a sensation of pressure. Another thought, I might get a sensation of panic. Another thought might have me running before I've even realized that I've had the thought, right? So the thought has some sort of charge to it. And what I want to teach people is how to select new words and new frames of thought to get a different charge in your body in order to get a more desired result. So that's one piece of the teachings and the philosophies. But the other piece is to disassociate identity with a thought in the first place of it is an experience, it's not who I am, because I personally believe identity is the fixed part of us that never changes. It was true on the day we came in and it'll be true on the day that we came out. And so if who I am never changes, but what I experience does, then I might say like I'm having this experience of this thought and the result of that is that I feel pressure. I would get curious about that. But I've also gotten really curious as like, oh, this thought gives me a positive charge in my body. I'm creating behaviors that I actually really like. I like who I'm becoming. And we'll use words like who I'm becoming when it creates like a strength, when it creates strength in a body, when it feels, if you say something about yourself that has a positive emotional charge, I'm good with you saying that's my identity because it gives you power. I really believe like if you asked me what my name is, my arm would stay strong. You'd muscle test it, right? And so the truth is that my name, at least in this life, depending on your beliefs, is Andrea.
In this timeline, in this life.
In this timeline, this is like, whatever the rest of it, I have speculations about what's happened pre or post this body, but at the end of the day, I still don't know, right? Like if you muscle test me on my beliefs about spirituality, my body would say strong. But somebody else who has very, very different belief systems, their body would say strong too. Does it make either of us right or either of us wrong? No, but it gives someone a sense of power. It gives someone a sense of connection. And so I don't think that truth is an absolute. I think truth is nuanced for the individual, but I like any truth that creates power in your body because that gives you a sensation that you can build off of, make peace with the conditions you're in, then you can improve upon it.
So good. Okay, I have two more questions. Hopefully it won't be too long so we can then talk about the pleasure model and your promo for this round because it's so fun. You recently did an Instagram reel and where you said something like something to the effect of like, if you should do something, if you don't feel good about what you're about to do, it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So can you explain that? Because I think in this conversation with the pleasure model, it's really easy to think, oh, well, I don't feel like that good about this thing. So I'm just not, you know what? I'm not going to do anything with business for the next 14 days and I'll just sit back and wait for things to come. And that's not what you actually mean.
Right. So sensations create confusion. And so what the real was is alignment isn't feeling good doing it. Alignment is feeling good having done it, which is a significant difference. Because the example that I gave, I call this first bite energy versus last bite energy. If you're dairy intolerant, that first bite of ice cream feels amazing. You might say, I'm in alignment with this ice cream, right? It's like, it's euphoric. And then by the end of the ice cream, not so in alignment anymore because you're spending the next 12 hours in the bathroom, right? And so you're not in alignment with it if after you've done it, you're suffering. And last night, for example, we're in the middle of the pleasure model launch and I still had some ad copy that I needed to write for the person running my ads. It's now 11 o'clock or something like that. And I'm like, I really it would feel better to write those ads tomorrow. But then I imagined when I woke up this morning, I was like, let me see how I'll feel when I wake up if I saved this for myself tomorrow. And I knew that I would wake up with stress. So I don't fuck my future self like that. I'm like, no, girl, I've got your back. I'm not going to ruin your day first thing in the morning tomorrow. So simply put, alignment is imagine having done it. And then if you get an increase of energy, it's a yes. If you get a decrease of energy, it's a no. Or if it makes you feel more alive, it's a yes. If it makes you feel less alive, it's a no. And that will help you know the truth of whether it's in true alignment with you, because the length of time that we reminisce on something that we've done is much longer than any experience we'll ever have doing it. A kiss with the guy that we went back to might feel really good to do and then not so good to have done because now we got retangled back in a relationship that was far below our standards and what we are actually looking for in relationship. Our future self is not pleased with our decision.
I love
So,
that quote too. I don't fuck my future self like that. Like that also is like a poster. That's really good. So for anyone who's listening who knows like they are in a stress response a lot of the time where they're like when they're working, I know I used to be like this. Whenever I had this thing where when I would show up to any live call where I was like paying to be a part of it, I would be like in such a heightened state, my nervous system.
yeah.
And by the end of the call, I wouldn't even be talking. This was like in 2019, 2020. I'd be like, by the end of it, I would have cold sweat through all of my clothes. And I
Yeah.
didn't even realize it was happening until I went to my Yes Supply Masters training, and it was 21 days in a row. And I realized after the first few days that was happening, and I was able to like come back and fix it. But for people who are like sitting, who are like working through this stress response, who know like they're just in that like I got to get it done, like I just got to do it. And do you feel like the pleasure model would help them kind of like unwind that? Is there somewhere else for them to go? Because I know I have heard when you ask someone that question who's in stress response, they first have to really learn how to almost like have a conversation with themselves like that because the stress response sometimes can block it out.
Yes. So, from a practical, and this is really such a great question because my job first is to help your unconscious mind, which is making 95% of all your decisions, to get that facet of your mind on board. And we have to do that from a logical and illogical perspective. So if I did like a really like rapid transformation call with a client where I'm like, okay, we have to shift how they're thinking and feeling about this instantly. The first thing that I have to do is I have to get unconscious permission that it's okay. And so I might ask, would it be okay for you to not be stressed right now? And they'll might answer, I'll notice if somebody answers really logically first. And they're like, yeah, no, that's why I'm here, Andrea. And I say, no, close your eyes, put your hand on your heart, and just pause and scan your body. I don't want to know what your mind says. I want to know what your body says. Would it be okay for you to not be stressed right now? And most people would be like, oh my God, shit, no. And the reason for that is because oftentimes we're thinking that we need this pressure in our body in order to execute and get a good job done. But here's what we do, and this is the reason that moving from pleasure or love is way more significant than fear or pressure. And because what happens when you're in a state of pressure, it's like a variety of fear of like, if I don't get this done fast enough, something bad will happen, or I won't hit my goal this month, or I won't make enough money, or people won't still think that I'm like a valuable person to learn from, or whatever the narrative is that's occurring. Then what happens is when we're moving from that, blood leaves brain going to arms and legs, making us fast but less intelligent. Now, when we are looking to blow people's minds, to create the best work that we've ever created, and to be able to be in this game for the long run, thinking with that like infinite mindset of like, I want to be here 10 years from now. I want to be here 20 years from now. I want to still be in the game because I bet you 100% of the people listening right now really love what they do. I'm sure they very, very much believe in what it is that they're doing, the customer that they want to serve. They probably love them very much, feel very deeply connected to them. If that's true, then when you are making decision using predominantly the energy from arms and legs, making you fast but less intelligent, you've compromised creativity, you've compromised intuition, you are way more limited on focus. In fact, if you're in a state of fear, you're very focused on the immediate threat, but your peripheral vision essentially goes dark. So you might not see, let's say you're driving on the freeway and you're like, I want to start horseback riding or something like that, right? You're like, this has been a goal of mine for a really long time. I really want to start horseback riding. And you're driving on the freeway, but you're in a state of fear of like, I got to get this got to get this masterclass written. I've got to get this client work done. I've got to say yes to this client, even though I really don't want to work with them in order to hit my financial goal for the month. We're driving on the freeway, peripheral vision is dark. You never see the sign of like, oh my God, I've been wanting to learn to horseback ride. And then the person who you would have learned a horseback ride from also ends up becoming your ideal client because they're running this farm or whatever, and they really need help with their marketing, and that's your zone of genius is marketing, right? Like, see, all of these synchronicities, if you believe that the universe is conspiring in your favor, you've got to get behind the universe actually conspiring in your favor. You got to get on the same team. But when your peripheral vision is dark, you're missing out on so much of your vision. You miss the cues. You literally are blind to them. So my job is to increase the amount of which you can see so that you don't miss those cues.
That's so good. And that's so powerful. And it's interesting because I think a lot of people have this relationship where they don't, if they remove, they fear, if they remove the pressure, if they remove the stress response, they don't trust themselves to do the thing that they need to do. And really, it's the opposite because the universe will start conspiring in your favor and you actually can get so much more. Like you said, you wrote the entire masterclass in how many minutes?
12.
Like you could have spent 5 hours banging your head against the wall and it wouldn't
Sure.
have been as good.
100%. No, I rewrote it like 3 times. And then finally I was like, what the fuck am I doing? So, like, it's not that I'm immune to it being an experience sometimes. It's just I'm generally much faster of shifting it when it happens. And really, it doesn't happen very often for me. Most of the time, I'm very much there. And I would say that if you think that you're not going to take as much action and you need the pressure in order to achieve, I would suggest that when you are in a state of play, number one, you increase the amount of time that you can get tasks done when you're in a state of focus. Do the research on like the energy of like play, curiosity, wonder, and like how that translates to achievement. There's tons of research already out there for you. But I think people already understand like when you're in that relaxed state, you're in the shower, you're driving, all of a sudden that good idea comes in that if you had stayed focused and you just barreled through your to-do list, there's been times where I'm like, why is it that I'm being guided to watch Grey's Anatomy versus actually write this post, right? And then I'm like, you know what? I promised myself I'm going to follow the energy. I'll place my attention at the end of having done it. There was an increase of energy and I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to watch Grey's Anatomy. And then the scene comes on Grey's Anatomy where I'm like watching the experience of someone persist against what's happening for her. She's having a baby early. All of a sudden, she's in a clinic, there's a riot outside. She's like, I don't want to have my baby in a riot. And like the way that her community surrounded her in order for her to like refresh her spirit, to get her attention back on her job, which is to deliver this baby and to create a bit more beautiful experience. Literally, I'm just getting chills remembering watching it. And I'm like, that was part of my masterclass. It was talking about like, be careful about who you surround yourself with. Make sure that you surround yourself with people and things that keep your spirit fresh because we're here for a long time. Like, thank God I followed the energy and I watched Grey's Anatomy where most people would have been like, I can't. And I swear to God, my masterclass was so much better because of it.
100%. Oh my gosh. Okay. So tell everyone about the pleasure model. You're relaunching it. The first round was like, what was it like
2023.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And that I can remember, I have a distinct memory of like sitting and walking on the beach, listening to those episodes.
Yeah. So the pleasure model essentially breaks up how I define freedom. That was kind of one of my parts of journey. I'm like, I stand for freedom. I stand for freedom. And one day I woke up and I'm like, I don't feel free. Also, what does freedom mean to me? And so I wrote out freedom in big letters. And I was like, if I could associate a word with each letter, what would that be? And so I created my own acronym for freedom. And it stands for, the F is fulfillment, relationships, energy, expression, direction, opportunity, and money. And I believe if you follow on the first six, the money happens as a byproduct. And that's what's been true for me since that first time where I started the experiment of I won't make a penny from pressure, only pleasure. That year we 300x'd and we did just shy of $1 million. And every year after that, we've done over $1 million. So I've never made I've never made less than a million other than that first year, not a penny from pressure, only pleasure. And so it breaks down like what is the art of fulfillment and how do we do that? And we've only ever had one refund request for the pleasure model, by the way. We do have a 72-hour lever to leave it policy on that program. It's an $1,800 program, 25% off right now. And this girl messaged back and she's like, but where's my homework? And I was like, oh, I didn't give you any because I already did it. And she she was still so devoted that it had to be hard and she needed to have her call to action and what there is some stuff where I'm like,
Yeah, yeah.
here's a different way of like implementing this. Like I teach some of like how I coach my clients and how I help them get more rapid transformations. And like there is some stuff where I explain that, but she was like so devoted to like there needed to be like an extreme homework where most of it is no, I'm actually rearranging this for you in your mind. And if you just listen, and I said, can you tell me what you've listened to that like hasn't met your expectations? There might be a hole in the content, and I'm totally willing, if I feel like it would bring value to the majority of the clients, like I'll add to it. And then what I realized is she was asking for a refund and Christmas was next month. And it was 3 months, by the way, it was 3 months after the deadline of the refund policy. So I give you 72 hours. You can try my work. If it's not for you, you'll get a total refund. No questions asked. Just tell us what didn't work for you. And 3 months later, she was like, this isn't what I thought it was. And then I was like, I see what's happening here for you. And like, I'm totally willing to like bring more value to this program in order for you to have it. But like, I kind of suspect that what you're saying is the issue isn't the issue. And that's what I like is like my customer, she doesn't have the time. She wants to integrate, but she wants integration to really happen for her, which is like a special kind of blend of what it is that I do. Is like I really do cause a lot of the emotional transformation for you, and then the other things that you could bring into your business and do differently are totally up to you as long as it fits within your values and what would bring value to your business and your customer and you emotionally and holistically.
So
But
good. Oh my gosh. Well, the link to the pleasure model will be around this video. And is there anywhere else they can go to learn more?
nope. Grab your link and that's it. Yeah. And if you guys have any questions, you guys can send an email to hello@AndreaCrowder. You can send me a DM. I'm in my DMs all the time. If it's not like where's the link, my assistant will answer those. But if you have genuine questions, I'm in my DMs all the time. So if we miss one of them because of mini chat, you guys know how it is. Sometimes like
The many chats start talking to each other.
right, then just send us an email.
Well,
You
thank you
bypass.
so much. And really just thank you for having and being willing to have these conversations because they're just so important. And the fact like thank you for just going first with this because it's just so powerful. And I know like it made such a big, huge difference, not only in my life, but also in the way that I was working and in my relationships and how I'm in relationship with pleasure, money, business, all of the things. So it is one of the best things that I have ever taken. So I couldn't recommend it enough.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.